you. Ko Lucinda Blackley-Jimson, tōku ingoa. I'm Chief Executive at Nelson Provincial Museum. I'm also a board member of Museums Aotearoa, and I've got the first 10 minutes today. Belinda Wheatley, who is our amazing project manager for the art project, will speak for the second 10 minutes. So I'm just going to zip into it really quickly because we've got quite a lot to cover, and I really wanted to talk about the value of museums and art galleries to our cities and to our amazing little cities like Nelson, and what more we can do. So, just to introduce us, we are a cultural anchor point in the central city. We are just down the road. I hope everyone knows where we are, but every so often we run into people who don't. If you all have seen any of what's been happening with our exhibition program recently, the Kapahaka event that was for the opening of Melissa Banks' the Aotearoa exhibition, all the activations that we've been involved in for the Arts Festival, you'll know that we get outside and we use that space in Upper Trafalgar Street a lot. We're involved in everything. We're involved in all these things that are happening in the city. So we're just not just inside our box, we really get out and inhabit that big space. Also mention that we're kaitiaki, our caretakers of the Regional Heritage Collection of Nelson and Tasman. And that's been valued recently by Dunbar's loan at $20 million, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. So today I wanted to talk a bit nationally about the benefits of art galleries and museums in New Zealand. And as I mentioned, I'm a board member of Museums Aotearoa. That's our national organisation that represents us professionally. And that organisation decided it was a really good opportunity to do some research and really quantify the benefits of what we contribute, because everybody knows that we make cities more livable, more enjoyable, we provide education opportunities for kids, we provide engagement, we provide tourism opportunities for everybody coming through, but we needed to quantify it, so we did some research. I like this quote from our CEO, Adele Fitzpatrick. Museums and galleries are amazing, beautiful places that people visit to not only see things, but to gain new experiences. They're places where people discover, understand, learn, question, ask, challenge, seek or absorb, where people connect with each other to share, discuss, and be together in a new and engaging way. How do people perceive the role of museums and galleries? Well, we enable community connection and support. We are committed to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and we have a very strong bicultural kaupapa that is at the heart of what museums do. But we also tell all the multicultural stories of everybody who came here by virtue of the Treaty of Waitangi, and that's everyone else. So we have a commitment under the Treaty of Waitangi to tell all those stories. Representation and storytelling, that's at the heart of what we do, leading and facilitating relevant conversations, and a commitment to quality experiences, and that's certainly what we have at Nelson Provincial Museum. You might be interested to know that nationally, museums and galleries provide around 3,500 jobs. We're good employers. We add 272 million to the GDP. We provide educational services valued at almost 25 million. We have building assets worth about 2 billion, and we have natural history collections, which are vitally important from extinct and threatened species that preserve their critical DNA for study and research into how things have changed. For example, how eggs have become less robust with the environmental conditions. Very important scientific research. And collections that are valued together at $3.6 billion. We have 45 million objects and 17.5 million visits every year. We're actually pretty important. And we also deliver on the Treasury Living Standard outcomes, and these are the things that Council have to report back every year to the central government. Cultural wellbeing, economic wellbeing, social wellbeing, environmental wellbeing. We have all this information to prove that we make a significant contribution to how livable a city is and the wellbeing of the people who live within it. And there's several studies that have been recently done in New Zealand to show that for every dollar invested in museums, $5 value is generated. We're really important and we add a lot. If our communities are to continue to enjoy vibrant and affordable exhibitions of our taonga into the future, we need to recognise the value of our museums and galleries and ensure that they are supported appropriately, and we need to be vocal about it because there is such an important contribution that museums and galleries make to our cities. As I mentioned, we have a collection valued at $20 million. Any business with an asset base of $20 million would be able to return significant profits on that investment. We're not wanting to do that. We're a critical public good, but it needs to be recognised that this is what we're doing on behalf of our councils. At a time when the cost of living is skyrocketing, it's vital that people have places they can visit that enrich them, places that educate, inspire and excite the next generation of New Zealanders. So, Nelson Provincial Museum, what if? And this is what we want to do. We've got a major plan for refreshment and revitalisation going forward. Belinda's going to speak about the first plan of that, Plan A for the art facility. But after that's done, what we want to do is create a new regional gallery to better tell our people's stories. That's top of our list. That's what we're going to be doing after art. We want to do an activated rooftop performance space. Hands-on Children's Discovery Centre. I saw here one of the suggestions is for a hands-on science centre. Yeah, that's what we want to do too. And a home for our heritage going forward. So those are all the plans of for the museum and what we can do to really activate the central city. Just before I hand over to Belinda, I just wanted to say, you remember that $20 million collection that I talked about earlier? Well, this was this morning, 8:40 a.m. at ISIL, we had the fire brigade out. There was a fire alarm that went off in our Bet store. You'll see that in the middle. This is where one of the locations where we store taonga, tapa, maps, and some of our archives are paper-based documents and social history documents. It's incredibly important what we keep in there. And we had the fire brigade out at 8:30. Now, I can't really estimate what that feeling does to you when you get the call to saying, we've got a fire alarm, we don't have anyone in the building yet, we're on our way. 10 minutes, took them 10 minutes to get there, and just imagine what could have happened in those 10 minutes. So I really want to just leave you with that, to think about the contribution that we do make in caring for our collection. It's a regional heritage asset that we must care for, otherwise we'll lose it. And what we can do to add value to our city and what we bring to our city. So I'm going to pass over to Belinda there now.
Kia ora. So Lucinda's talked about the value generated by the museum for our community and the long-term plans we have for revitalising and investing in the museum. One of the questions, I've attended a few of these talks this week, and one of the questions was, what if we valued our cultural institutions? What if we invested in them? What would that look like? And the good news is that I'm going to talk about the first phase of that investment for the museum. So its working title is the Archive Research and Collections Facility. So the $20 million collection, which actually belongs to the people of Nelson, Tasman, so it's your objects that we are safeguarding, our objects, and it's stored in a facility where they are at risk. So we've got some ongoing challenges. The collection's stored out at the ISIL Research Facility. So this is a building that is at the end of its useful life, essentially. In the August 2022 flooding event, we had water coming in the walls. It's really hard. Museum objects need particular conditions to ensure that they are well preserved and that they will endure for generations. So you need particular temperatures and humidity. We can't maintain that at ISIL. It's just not the building that can allow us to do that. So we often have to move collection items around so that we can facilitate repairs. There was recently a leak in the rear book room, for example. So all of those books have to be moved, the leak repaired, and then put back. Seismic risk, it's an old building, and also the flood risk. And some of that flood risk is just from its location. It's in Isle, it's near a beautiful picturesque park, which also has a creek. That's a flood risk for the building. And all those beautiful trees, great for people, but not great for a facility that could be at risk of having trees fall on it and damaging those items. So that's where our $20 million collection is right now. So we have started this has been a long-term project, by the way, to get this underway, and now it is underway. So we have an architect and design team working on the new facility, which is going to be on Church Street. So it's an ideal location because it will join the back of the museum. It won't physically join it, but the art facility in Church Street will join with the museum on the corner of Trafalgar and Hardy Street. So that's really good. So it means that we have objects that can easily be transferred for display, and it means that we have our team in one place, which is really important. And it means that when people come and visit the museum, they can also go to the collection store for their research, for students who come for education classes. So we have that architect and design team in place. Irving Smith Architects, Andrew Irving is designing the facility, working with the design team, and we have Vanessa Anderson from Cameron Gibson Wells, who's also providing project management, guidance and support for that design team. So we've done a lot of work. We know what we need in terms of collection space requirements. We have reviewed all those climate conditions to make sure that we are going to build the right facility for the collection. We've got our preliminary design approved, we've got resource consent granted. So we are at the end of the detailed design phase, and we're going to be submitting for building consent in April next year. So this isn't a what if, this is something that is actually happening in our city that we can get behind. So Scott Construction are going to be doing the building work. They're working with the design team right now to ensure that the building that is designed is very easily buildable. Ta-da! No, this is just an artist's impression. This is going to look a little bit different. So you get an idea of the height of the building. We are talking about a 3-story building on Church Street. The facade will look different. I'm really pleased to let you know that Robin Slow, who is a highly respected Māori artist living in Golden Bay, is going to be working with us on the exterior design of the building. And we want it to have a really strong presence. We want it to share our stories and communicate our identity through the building. So it's going to look a bit different, but it does give you an idea of the scale. This is just, I love this picture. This is Robin Slow has recently designed a screen for the Nelson Orthodontics building in Richmond. So that just gives you an idea of what the exterior of the building could look like. And again, telling our stories, sharing our history through the artworks. So what is this building going to look like? Well, on the ground floor, that's where we have the public reception area. So this is a community facility. We'll have research and meeting rooms there. We're going to have the right facilities to support manaakitanga, taking care of visitors, and also our tikanga. There'll be some open plan staff workspaces there. The front ground floor will be glazed so people can see in, and we're going to contribute to that lovely vibe that's on Church Street. The Taonga Māori collection will be on the ground floor, and our guiding committee wanted the Taonga Māori collection on the ground floor so it was close to the whenua, close to the earth. And then it also means that it's easy and accessible for people. And this is a working building. We've got our loading dock, pack store, quarantine. So when objects come in and out of museums, they need to be treated. When we bring objects in, we need to make sure that we're not bringing anything we don't want. So when objects come into the museum, they go into a quarantine area and often freezer treated to make sure any nasties, pests that might be brought in are eradicated. So the ground floor is kind of where it's at in terms of public presence, and then the level 2 and level 3 are mostly collection storage space. We have a large collection, $20 million, but also a lot of items, which include our UNESCO listed Tyree photograph collection. And that's important because negatives, glass plate negatives, they need even cooler conditions. So the ideal conditions for majority of the objects is like 18 degrees. For the cold, we've got cold dry and cool dry storage for things like our photographic objects. They need a temperature of some at 2 degrees, some at 12 degrees. So it's really cold. So it's a big investment in plant and services to achieve the right conditions for those objects. The benefits. So I think it's fabulous that we are going to have some construction happening in our central business district. It's a real visible sign of progress and investment in our city. We're replacing what is essentially vacant CBD space with a new facility. We're going to be bringing people into town, so we'll be bringing staff who work at ISIL into town. We're also going to be attracting more visitors. There are a lot of people who need access to the collection, researchers, school students, and they'll be able to do that when our facility is in town. We're going to contribute to that vibrancy around the Upper Trafalgar Street. As Lucinda said, when we had a recent exhibition opening, we had people spilling out into the street, and that's great. So bringing those people into the city, a visible sign of investment, and just really contributing to that lovely city centre feel. So people are going to ask about funding. We're really grateful to Nelson City Council and Tasman District Council. They recognise the need to protect the collection. They recognise the value that the museum offers. So we have over $6 million of our total budget has been provided by local government. We are going to be working with the Regional Cultural and Heritage Fund, Ministry of Culture and Heritage, to secure central government funding of around $5.5 million. We've also been granted $300,000 already by the lottery grants, and we've applied to the Rata Foundation for $500,000. The Tasman-based Heritage Trust has already contributed $1.2 million of the trust's money, and we will be doing a community fundraising campaign. Not yet. We are waiting until the beginning of next year when we are 100% confident that we have the other funding secured before we start asking our community for money. But there is a quiet fundraising campaign happening right now. We're high net worth individuals. We've got a team of ambassadors working on our behalf, contacting people. So the total cost of the new facility, $14.9 million, and we're well on our way to achieving the fundraising targets. So next steps, what's going to happen? Well, we're going to be doing continuous fundraising, and there will be a public launch next year for the fundraising campaign. We're going to finalise that detailed design. We're going to have a go-pause decision to make sure we have got the right funding secured. Now, I say go-pause, people might be familiar with go, no go. There is no option to not go. We need to protect the collection, and we need to protect our staff. So it'll be a go-pause until we've got the money, not a go, no go. This is definitely happening. Building consent, we'll be applying for that in April, and then you're going to see some construction in our city in the middle of next year. Any questions?
Provincial Growth Fund comes to mind.
Oh, I know. There's so many announcements recently about Shane Jones, and he's got an infrastructure fund. Don't worry, we're onto him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking the same thing.
It sounds wonderful, and the collection was struggling so much out at Isle Park. I thought it would sort of disintegrate.
Yeah.
So
yes, we have those moments where we worry it's not going to last. Like this morning, that just shows how crucial it is that we get this project up and running as soon as possible.
It's wonderful that we'll be able to sort of
accessibility.
Go into the museum and look at the prow, and then go next door into Isle House and look up the things we've just checked out.
Yep.
Sorry, you were saying?
Kia ora.
As all collections grow over time, how long do you think the facility will last with the growth in the collection?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have worked with our collections leader and the architect. We have incredibly detailed spreadsheets of what we have now, and we've also built in an allowance for growth. And that has been quite detailed. So instead of going, the collection will grow at X percentage per year, we've looked at items within the collection. So for example, the newspaper collection is not really going to grow. We don't want that to grow. But there are other areas, so that's a 0% growth rate, where there are other areas where we know we have some gaps in our collection, or areas that we'd like to strengthen. So for example, more of our like local business history, more of our sort of modern history, but also the Taonga Māori collection, we'd like to grow that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been, since the very first idea of this, we have been working on how it will accommodate growth going forwards.
Yeah.
So are we talking 50 years or 80 years for the period before it should be enlarged, or?
What's the life of the building, Vanessa?
50 years. So
Yeah.
the building's designed for 50 years.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that it gets pulled down after 50 years, but that's an engineering.
So that it's definitely, we have designed this with the future in mind. So we don't open like an unfortunate facility in Hawke's Bay that opened and then went, oops, we haven't got enough space and we've only just opened. We're not planning on that.
No, so 50 years. Just a short answer to the question.
It's actually more a statement than a question. It sounds really amazing. I was just thinking, in a way, this what-if process would be a wonderful kind of archive to have too. In 100 years' time, when somebody says, "I wonder how the city got to be like it is," and all this input in this different kind of way, you go right back in time as well. But this is a hopefully pivotal moment for the city as well.
That's a really fantastic idea, Belinda. So I think we'll have a talk to you afterwards about archiving. We do very much want to collect contemporary items and things that relate to the importance of Nelson. So yeah, let's have a talk about that.
Does it have areas specific for digital archiving, for like setting up photography and documenting all of your pieces?
Yes, we do. So we have somebody employed, a photographic technician employed currently doing that, and we have a small studio. But when we move into the new facility, we'll be able to have much better resources. Currently, she has to photograph things in corridors, and some of our corridors aren't even big enough to photograph some of our objects, which are significant. Some of the maps are very large. So in terms of facilities, we're going to, it'll be a lot easier to do that going forward and a lot better.
Do you think that space will be accessible for local artists to document their artworks and pieces like that as well, or do you think this is just a museum side of things, or is that?
Certainly we've got to, I guess the key focus will be on documenting the collection. So we have hundreds of thousands of objects already on collections online, but we have thousands and hundreds of thousands more to go, but that's something we could look into. That's a good idea, so thanks for that. That's something we hadn't considered. But
more, and then it gets artists like somewhere that they can take high quality imagery and consistent imagery of their works. So.
It's a really good idea, we'll look into that. Thank you.
Sorry, I just missed the very beginning of the talk, but how many people are currently employed at the museum in sort of like FTEs?
Okay, so we have about 23 people who are all amazing, but that works out to around 13, 14 FTEs. So we don't have a big staff.
Right, and is this the new project liable to perhaps increase the number of people who are working at the museum, or are there plans to expand the entire operation?
Sadly not. We do have some constraints that we need to work with, but potentially we're going to be able to have more front of house team to be able to make it more accessible for different hours. But it's also going to make our curators' life a lot easier, because it's really hard for them to work in the conditions at ISIL. It's really hard for them to access the Taonga and the objects there. So this is actually going to create a lot of efficiencies for them in being able to interact with the objects and actually do their work.
Oh, thank you. And could I just add my my gratitude and to the museum over the years. I know that's something when we were not living in Nelson, our kids always insisted on at least one museum visit whenever, you know, we came, and it was always really an important part of our visits and ours. So I hope that continues for many, many generations to come. And just to the gentleman who's asking about artist facilities, perhaps that could be talked about within the potential artist hub that's going to be developed in Rutherford News, which is very, very close. We might have conversations about that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Donna?
Does the building have a story?
Have a story? Yes, it does. I mean, it houses many of our stories and our treasures. I think the artwork that Robin Slow is going to be doing is very much going to be telling the story of iwi here and iwi presence in Nelson, and there's a wānanga coming up at Onitahua Morai with iwi to work through what those stories will be and how they're going to be told. So yes, absolutely.
One of the things that has happened to my involvement with buildings and curating has been that we get called in to Māorify a building. That often we're not there at the beginning to actually discuss what the grounding story or the ideas that we'd like to contribute. It's always about making it look Māori. So I'm just interested in, when you met with the architect and designers, what were the ideas that were thrown around then? And so when we go to the museum and we look at this architectural building, we go, well, actually, this is the story.
Absolutely. And before we went to the architect, we've had a lot of conversations with iwi through Te Tao Komiti, which is our iwi steering group. And our then chair, Olivia Hall, and our kaitiaki Taonga Hamuera Rob, had a lot of input into the design of the spaces. So before we even really went to the architect, there were discussions about where the taonga should be. And originally there had been an idea about the taonga being on the top floor, but it was very important that the taonga were associated close to the whenua as possible. So all those conversations have happened.
One of the first meetings our architect had was with our komiti, so that he had received a document about mana whenua aspirations for the building. Then our architect came to meet with the komiti so that they could provide feedback on what it was that was important to them, and the design did change in response to that feedback, so that's been really important. And our architect is the person who initiated the first conversation with the Māori artist, Robin Slow, so that they can talk about the overall building and not just let's make it look pretty on the outside, where he is talking about the story that it will tell and how it has a Māori presence rather than a Māori appearance.
And the ground floor where the taonga is and the public spaces have been very much designed around the proper tikanga. There was a lot of iwi input into how those spaces would flow, and around kaumātua access to ensure it's accessible as possible too.
And for Māori people to be able to come in and have access to that taonga, to be able to spend time with the objects in the whare taonga.
I think we're going through an interesting time at the moment, and I love that is happening, but also that everybody knows the story. You know, that if it is talking about our tupuna or about the iwi, that there are other connections for everybody. And our storytelling is normally good at doing that, so thank you.
Well, I think we're dead on time.